I did, but I only did an Amud. An Amud. Today I'm trying to do a bot. Okay, so let's get started. Zog the Heilige Gemara. Zog the Heilige Mishnah. Nochri shehelva es Yisrael al chemtzei. A goy lent a Jew money, and the goy said, "What if you can't pay me back?" So the Jew said, "No problem. It's Pesach time anyway. How about I give you $1,000 worth of chametz as collateral for the $1,000 that I borrowed from you?" That's a Jew pulling a fast one. You could have my chametz right before Pesach, right? So the halacha is muter b'hanoha. We consider the chametz as having been in the reshus of the goy for Pesach, so therefore we will not consider it chametz overlov Pesach. And the Gemara is going to struggle to understand what this means. But in the first step, the Gemara said that this is speaking not just that I'm using my chametz as collateral, but I actually gave my chametz to the goy. The chametz will physically be in the goy's home throughout Pesach, not in my home, and it's working with the concept of Bal Choiv Koine Mashkin. So the goy in this case owns the chametz that's in the goy's rishus, and therefore it's mutar b'hanoah. If exactly the opposite occurred, Yisrael Shelves Nochri al Chemtzei Achar Pesach Asur b'hanoah, because the Jew would not have been able to have the goy's chametz in his possession and being koine the mashkin, having kept it in the Jew's house, and therefore it would be chametz over lova Pesach, which would be asur b'hanoah. Whether it's deraisa according to Yehuda, the Rabbana according to Reb Shimon, doesn't matter. But the question is, if this was chametz over lova Pesach,
who would have the chiyuv to insure it?
I mean, who is chayiv in its achrayus?
Who has the ownership that if something happens to it?
That's a very good point. It's mamish not some a good point. You hit the nail on the head, because we're going to learn soon that b'choiv koine mashkin l'may nafkamina to be mechuyev anointing. Exactly like what you're saying. That is the litmus test of who owns it, who has to insure it, who's responsible for it. So exactly what you're saying is how Rashi understands b'choiv koine mashkin. Zok the Gemara, Itmar, Bal Choiv. So Reuven borrows money from Shimon, which means Shimon is the Bal Choiv. Shimon is the one, is the Malva. Abai Omer L'Mafrei Hugoiva. If the Malva collects, we say it's as if he collected at the time of the loan. So just to make it clear with an example, let's use this chametz as an example. If the loiva gives the Malva chametz and says, this chametz is collateral. If I don't pay you back by January 15th, you can take this $1,000 worth of chametz. Come January 15th, the loiva did not have the money to pay. The malva seizes the chametz. From when do we consider the chametz belonging to the malva? Does it belong to the malva from the day that he seized it, or does it belong to the malva from the day that the original loan was made? Abaya says it belongs to the malva from the day the original loan was made. Now we're going to have a lot of shilas about what this means, but let's just take the words as they are, and we'll let the Gemara develop the thought. So Abai says, we say that when the original choiv occurred, that from that point on, do we consider whatever the malva had eventually taken as payment, it's as if it was his from the time of the loan. For Rav Amar Mikana Labo Goiva, it's considered the malva's once he seized it, but not before. So now let's see what the nafkamina will be l'alacha. Kolecha de'akdish loiva v'zaven loiva. The loiva, if he was makdish it after the loan occurred, but before it was seized from him, or v'zaven loiva, or he sold it to a third party, again after the loan was made, but before it was seized from him, kula amaloi pligi da'asi malva v'tarif v'asi malva upar. Everybody agrees that the malva can go to the purchaser and take it because he had a lien on it. And therefore, since he had a lien on it, he can claim it and take it away from the lekech. Or if he was makdish, the malva can go and seize it from hektish, but it says uporik, and he could redeem it. If he could seize it from hektish, because the original donation to hektish is subject to the lien, why does he have to give the hektish anything? So Rashi says he only has to give him a mashahu, because otherwise it'll look like hektish is hefker petrishka, and someone can just take away hektish. So it's only a takana that he has to give a pruta to hektish when he seizes these things which are rightfully his, so that people shouldn't say that hektish goes l'chulin without any type of payment. And Rashi shares with us an interesting story. Let's say a malva lends $100 to a loiva, and the loiva has a mashkin, and the mashkin is worth $90. It's worth $90, and the loiva is makdish the mashkin. Now the malva wants to seize that mashkin. At least he can recoup $90 out of the $100 that's owed him. But when he goes to hektish, he can't just take that $90 mashkin. He has to give $1 to hektish because of this takana, because then it looks like hektish is going l'chulin without any type of redemption. So therefore, he has to add $1. So now that adds the cost to the loan. So now instead of the loiva owing him $100, now the loiva owes him $101, because that expense that he had to expense to get the mashkin out of hektish gets added to the loan. So now the loiva owes him $101. He seized an object from hektish worth $90, so the loiva still owes him $11. So sometimes you have to spend money to get money. And it reminded me of a story. I believe it happened. I said over a story that happened with a friend of mine, and then Chaim Tzvi said a similar story happened in the Aguda, which was a friend of mine was owed $5,000 by a customer of his, and he was bugging the guy, and the guy wasn't paying him until the guy finally gave him a $5,000 check and said, "Here's a check." So my friend, before he deposits, he knows this guy's not good for his money, so he goes to the bank, the branch that the check was issued out of, and asks the teller, "I'd like to certify this check." The teller says, "You can't. This check is not certifiable." So my friend asks, "Well, how about if I deposit $100 into the writer's account? Will it then be certifiable?" She said, "No." "How about 200? When you got up to $600, the teller said, "Yeah, if you deposit $600 into this fellow's account, then we can certify the check," which is exactly what he did. He certified the check, and at least he got his $4,400 out of it. The next day, this fellow owed him the money, came over to him and screamed at him, "You ganav what you are! How dare you do that to me? You stole money from me." That's a fakeros. So supposedly this happened with the Aguda. The Aguda got a check from somebody, and they also had to put money into this person's account in order to be able to certify the check, which they did. And the guy came screaming to the Gaboyim and told the Gaboyim, "What a chutzpah! You stole that money. I had that money put away to buy my wife a piece of jewelry, and now you stole it from me for your membership." That was the story that somebody said over. So anyway, here the Malva has to pay money to get it out of hektish, not because it's really hektish, but because it shouldn't look like hektish goes hefker petushke. That nan moisav oidiner upoides and achasum hailu. So keep ligi. So where is there a machlokes? Where does it make a difference if you hold balchoiv mikana labagoiva or lamakfreyogoiva? The zovin malva, the kodesh malva. Not that the loiva gave it to hektish or sold it, but the malva sold it and gave it to hektish. Abai omer lamafreyogoiva. We consider it the malvas from the time of the loan. Even since the deadline to pay has arrived and passed, and he didn't pay, the loiva didn't pay, it shows us that this collateral object was always the malbis, and therefore the shopper aktish, the shopper zovin, it's a good hektish and it's a good sale. For Rav Amar mikana labo goiva, we only look at it like it belongs to the malva after the point of default. Why? Since if the loiva would have had the money to pay, he would have been able to pay off the loan before the deadline and would have retrieved his mashkin. So because of that, I argue, Dr. Rava, that the kinyan only occurs at the time of the seizure. And if that's the case, the hektish is not valid, the sale is not valid. The malva can take back from hektish the chayfetz that it was makdish. The malva can take back from hektish, take back from the lakeach, the product that he sold. Zok the Gemara. Umi Omer Rava Haki. Does Rava really say that it's mikana labo goiv? But Ami Rabbi Bar Chama. Rabbi Bar Chama has a fascinating case. Reuven shemacher sadel Shimon b'achrayis. Reuven sold a field to Shimon, and let's say the field is $100,000. The purchase price was $100,000. He sold his field to Shimon with achrayis. Achrayis means we know that if any field that you have is automatically meshubed to pay any loan, any outstanding loan that you might have. There's a lien on your property. Therefore, if you sell this property and the creditor has to collect on the lien, the creditor can take away a field that you sold to a third party. So when Reuven sold something to Shimon, it would be possible that one of Reuven's creditors will seize this field from Shimon. What type of recourse does Shimon have? So if he buys a chrayas, if he buys title insurance from Reuven when he makes the purchase of the property, then Reuven is accepting upon himself the responsibility to pay back Shimon if one of his creditors seizes the property from Shimon, and it's a shibud, meaning it's like a loan of milva b'shtar, that all of Reuven's karkoyas, all of his possessions are liened to pay back Shimon, to make Shimon whole, if the property that Shimon buys from Reuven gets seized from him. But Shimon was a smart guy. When he bought this property with achrayas, he didn't pay cash. V'zokvan alav v'milva. Shimon took a VTB, which means Shimon got the property. He did not pay Reuven for it. He owes Reuven $100,000, which is the purchase price, and he never paid. And then Reuven died. So Shimon has the field. He bought it fair and square. Reuven doesn't have the money yet. Shimon's going to pay him. And what happened was Umeis Reuven. Now Reuven died.
Would he be second in priority to the other lender?
Can you say that again?
Wouldn't he be second in priority to the other lender?
He definitely is.
So,
but he has one thing going for him, is he's holding the cash. He never paid for the field.
Right. Okay.
So Umeis Reuven. Reuven died. But also b'chayv the Reuven. Now this creditor, Ploni Almoini, came for Torfalei Shimon, and he wanted to seize this $100,000 property away from Shimon because of an old loan that the deceased had with him. So Shimon didn't want to lose the property. So Shimon took the cash that he was intending to pay the estate, which was the purchase payment for his purchase. But also Shimon ufaise bezuzeh. And Shimon took that money that he wanted to give the Yosoimim. He wanted to pay the estate because he owed it on the property. And instead, he paid off the Baal Choiv with that money so that he could retain the property. So this was a very bad move. Dinahu, the din is, the also b'nei Reuven, the estate can come, the Yosoimim can come, for Amar Shimon, and they can tell Shimon, you still have to pay us in full. You still owe us the money in full that you accepted upon yourself to pay for the property. Why? Anan mitaltli shavak avun gaboch. My father, our father, left mitaltlin that belonged to us in your pocket. In other words, you owed cash. You owed us cash. So what you owe us, which you have a chiyuv to pay, is cash. It's not karka. Umitaltli diyasmi l'bachayv l'mishtabdi. You have to give us that cash. You can't say that I'm paying off my father's loan with it. Because my father, any cash that we would have inherited from my father, including the cash that's in your pocket, we would never have had to pay to the Bachoiv. Because Matalta Gliasme is not Meshuvit. So because of that, if you paid off the Bachoiv, that's your own business. But it does not absolve you from paying us in full. So now Shimon's out the money. Because Shimon paid off the Bachoiv, and now he still owes the money to the estate. So he's a little bit in a pinch. So Rava, he went to a Toyin, he needed to speak to a Toyin how he can get out of this mess, and he found a great Toyin in Rava. And Rava told him, don't worry, I can tell you how you can get out of this mess. Well, Rava, Shimon, if Shimon's a smart guy, what he'll do is, he'll tell the Yisrael, yeah, I owe you $100,000, but unfortunately I have no cash. But I have a piece of property that I can give you. Magvula Ara. He can pay the assignment with karka. Karka, we said, is meshubed. Now, I have a loan with your father, a loan that there's a shibud on, and that is the achrayis that he gave me, the insurance that he gave me on the property that he sold me. And that shibud will transfer on to the property that I just gave you. Therefore, v'hadla gavluminayu, after he pays off the assignment with a piece of property, he can then turn around and seize that property back, because now that property is covered by the shibud that's still there from Reuven's time, because it's karka. The Omer Rab Nachman, because Rab Nachman said in a much easier case to understand, Yisoimim shegavu karka b'choivas aviyim. So let's say Ruvain was the deceased, and Ruvain in his lifetime had lent money to Shimon, which Shimon owed him, of course, but Reuben also borrowed money from Levi. Not an unusual scenario in Jewish life to borrow from Peter to pay Paul. So Reuben was owed by Shimon. Shimon owed Reuben $100,000, but Reuben owed Levi $100,000. So what happens is Reuben dies, and then the Yisraelim go to Shimon and say, "You owe us $100,000. If you don't have the cash, we will seize a property." So Yisraelim shagavu karka b'chayvus aviyim. The estate seized the property from Shimon because Shimon owed their father money. Now they have the property. So now Levi, who lent money to Ruvain, who lent money to the deceased, the Ba'choiv now, Levi can come and take that same property away from the Yisraelim because now it's karka. So in our case, in Rav Nachman's case, there's the Malva was Levi and the Loiva was Shimon. In our case, this same Shimon is both the Malva and the Loiva. He's the Malva because there's a Christ that Reuben owes him for, and he's the Loiva because he owes Reuben the purchase price. What's the difference if the Malva and the Loiva are two different people, or if the Malva and the Loiva are the same person? It doesn't matter. If the Yisraelim collected karka on behalf of a choy for their father, that karka will be meshubed to anybody who their father owed money to in his lifetime. So Zok the Gemara. This whole cheshbon makes perfect sense. If you hold like Abaye, that when you seize karka, we look at it like the karka was already in your possession from the day of the loan. Now it makes sense. Then it makes sense why the next malva can seize it from the Yisraelim, because we say that this karka that the Yisraelim seized on behalf of the estate, we look at it as if their father had it when he was alive. Because when his father lent the money, at that point we say this collateral already belonged to him, which is how Abaya learns. So therefore, it makes sense that it should be meshubed to another choiv that the deceased has. Because it's as if the father had collected this property already, and therefore it could be meshubed to another choiv which the father owed. Ella, however, if you're going to learn like Rava, that even though the Yisraelim now seized this property, it wasn't their father's property. It's like they acquired this new property now. If that's the case, why could Levi now go and seize this property away from them? This would be like the Yisraelim took cash that they had. They went and purchased a property. And of course, if you look on the Yasmi Nixi, if the Yisraelim took cash and went and bought a new property, Mika Meshavi L'Bachoiv, would anybody argue that a Bachoiv from their father, from before the father died, can come and take that new property? Of course not. This new property has no shaykhs to any of the earlier shibudim. It has nothing to do with the earlier shibudim. So therefore, if they seize, according to Rava, where when they seize a property, we only look at it like it's theirs now, why in the world should that be subject to seizure by Levi? Okay. That was the thought. Akiva, you were saying something.
No, I'd rather finish the Gemara, but it's the concept of the mafreya hu goive. Is that any time that you, if there's a loan and there's an erev on the loan, and even if it was in karka,
An orev,
and therefore, and the guy defaults on the loan, and you grab the thing, you go say this was he owed mafreya.
It was no. That's not a question. It was owed from the day of the choiv. The question is the asset that he seized. Do we consider it that it was his asset from day one?
What happens by a regular loan when there's a raven? Is that he seizes that from?
It doesn't matter who's paying. Whatever I get paid, we look at it like it was mine from the time of the loan. Yeah. Okay. So Zok the Gemara. So according to Rava, how are we going to explain how Levi can seize this property that the Yisraelim only seized, only acquired after their father died? Zok the Gemara, Shani Hosam, that cheshbon works with a whole new concept. And this is the famous Shibuda Rav Nosson. The Amar Lahu, the Levi can tell the Yisraelim, Ki heichad imishtabadna leilavuchain, The same way this property that you seized from Shimon. Why did you seize it from Shimon? Because this property was already meshubah to your father in your father's lifetime. Well, guess what? In your father's lifetime, mishtabadna nami lebachayv davuchain. The same property of Shimon that was meshubah to your father in his lifetime was meshubah to me in his lifetime. Why? Midir Abnasan. The Tanya Abnasan Naimer, min line lenoisha bechavere mona, bechavere bechavere. If Reuven knows Shimon amona and Shimon knows Levi amona, shamitzi mizeh b'nois nozeh. You can take the money from Reuven and pay it directly to Levi without going through Shimon. We know that from Talmud Leimer b'nosan alasher osham loy. You should give it to the person who's owed. And Rashi explains, it doesn't say you should pay lasher hilvehu loy. You don't pay off the person who lent you the money. Rather, you pay it to the man who's ultimately owed the money, which is not necessarily the person who lent you the money, because the person who lent you the money might owe it to a third party, and you're supposed to pay the money directly to the third party, which is the famous Shibuda de Rab Nosson. So basically, because of Shibuda de Rab Nosson, while Reuben was still alive, he had a lien on Shimon's property. Since he had a lien on Shimon's property while he was alive, we say by default that Levi also has access to the lien on Shimon's property because of Shibuda de Rab Nosson. So therefore, forget about Rava, forget about Abaye. Al Shibuda de Rab Nosson, we say that in Reuven's life already, Shimon's properties were directly encumbered directly to Levi because of Shibuda de Rab Nosson. Okay, now we're discussing the sugya of Abaye and Rava. We have not yet discussed its relevance to our Mishnah, although it's very relevant to our Mishnah, because first the Gemara offered up some other questions that are relevant to the machlokes between Abaye and Rava. Now the Gemara is going to introduce our Mishnah, which is really why the Gemara brought down the machlokes of Abaye and Rava to begin with, because of how it hinges on our Mishnah. So now let's focus on our Mishnah. Tanan, Nachri shehelva es Yisrael al chemtoi. A guy who lent a Yisrael money, and the Yisrael gave the guy collateral, the chametz. Now, when we learned the Mishnah, I told you that it's speaking where the Nachri took possession of the chametz and were storing the chametz in the Nachri's house. But that's because Rashi gave away what the Gemara is going to answer here. But now that we're learning the Gemara, we don't know yet that that's the case. So we think that the chametz is remaining in the Jew's house. It was set aside as a collateral to the loan that the Jew owes to the guy, but it's by the Yid. So Nachri Shilva es Yisrael al Chemtzoi. Achar Pesach muter bana. After Pesach, this food is muter bana, meaning we don't consider it like it spent Pesach in the Rishus of the Yid. Frek the Gemara. If you hold like Abaye, it makes perfect sense. Because even though right now throughout Pesach the chametz was in the Yid's Rishus, but since after Pesach, when the deadline occurred, the chametz was given to the goy to pay off the loan. We look at it as if the goy acquired this chametz the day he first gave the loan, which would have been before Pesach, which means Lemafreya, that chametz that was in the Yisrael's house for Pesach was not the Yisrael's chametz, it belonged to the goy. If you learn like Rava, that it only goes into the Rishus of the Malva when it's actually given to the Malva, well then Amai Mutter Ba'ana. How could Rava explain our Mishnah that this chametz would be Mutter Ba'ana? Rishus of the Yisrael have a koi. This chametz was in the Yid's Rishus al Pesach. It's pure, unadulterated chametz shavar leva Pesach. Zok the Gemara hacha b'mayaskinan kisher herhinu etzloi. The chametz that was designated as the mashkin on the chayiv was actually given to the guy. The guy took it into his home, and Rashi tells us that it's working with the concept that bal chayiv koine mashkin. Al bal chayiv is koine the mashkin, and like Reb David mentioned earlier in the Mishnah, he's koine to the point that he has to insure it. If anything happens to it, it's his problem. So it really belongs to the bal chayiv. So therefore, the chametz that was given to the guy belonged to the guy throughout Pesach, and therefore it's not Osher Bahana after Pesach. Mashenkin, the second case of our Mishnah, the flip side, where it was the Jew who lent the guy money, and the guy gave the Yid chametz to have in his possession throughout the entire time of the loan. Now this chametz spent it's Pesach in the Rishus of the Yid, and that's why it would be Aser Bano. Let's say that this machloikis between Rav and Abaye, if let's say that it's totally machloikis tanoim. So we need to mention our Mishnah is not relevant to the machlokes between Abaye and Rava, because our Mishnah is speaking about a mashkin that you took into your rishus. There, everybody agrees the Balchoiv is koinit, it's in his possession from the beginning. Abaye and Rava are arguing when there is no specific mashkin. It just says whenever you pay off a loan with shava kesef, that shava kesef, according to Abaye, is considered to have been in the property of the malva from the day of the loan, while according to Rava, it's only considered in the possession of the malva once he actually seizes it. So this shaila, leimekatanoi. Let's say there's a machlokes tanoim about Abaye and Rava's machlokes. And here's what the Brisa says. Yisrael shehilva lenachri al chemtzai. A yid that lent a goy money, and the collateral was chametz. But this wasn't the case of our herinu etzlai, like our Mishnah. It's a standard case. La'achar Pesach, einay over. After Pesach, he will not be over. So even though the Yisrael has a lien on the chametz, we don't say that it was in the Yisrael's rishus over Pesach, and there won't be an isser. Mishum Meir Amru, over. You are over. So the Gemara says, my lab, the the mandama who holds over, which is Rav Meir, holds that like Abaye, that once I seize the chametz as the payment for the loan, we look at it like the chametz was mine from the day of the loan, meaning the chametz was mine throughout Pesach, and therefore it's chametz over Alava Pesach. Umar Sover and the Tanakama holds Mikanu Labo Goiva, and therefore the chametz was not on my rishus until I seized it, which was after Pesach, and therefore Einoy over. Zok to Gemara v'tizbra. Can you possibly say that? Now in our Mishnah, we took the same case and we flipped it around from the Yid lending the Goy money to the Goy lending the Yid money, and they had opposite Piskei Halacha. Well, here let's look at the Seifa. Ema Seifa. Avol Nachri Shehelva Yisrael Al Chemtzoi. If the Goy lent money to the Jew and the Jew gave the Goy the collateral of chametz, La'achar Pesach Divra Koy Loiver, everybody holds that chametz is in the rishus of the Yid. If you're saying that this is totally in the machlokes Abaye and Rava, the psak halacha in the Seifa should be exactly the opposite of what the psak halacha was in the Reisha. Leman damar hasam eino yover. The man damar in the Reisha who holds that we consider the chametz in the rishus of the goy, and therefore it's not chametz trouble of a Pesach. Hacha here, where it's the Yid lending the money to the goy, we should say that Lemafreyu Goive, and it should be considered in the rishus of the Yid throughout Pesach. And the man damar hasam over hach eino yover. It should be exactly the opposite. How is it that everybody agrees that when it's the goy that lent the Yid money, divrak kol over? How could you explain that if you want to say that this brisa, the shaila hinges in if ba'choiv lemafreyu goive or mekan labo goive?
Again, I'm going to come back to this to Mafreya. Really, you can't say, we can only say Mafreya after the fact. When we see the guy defaults on the loan, then we put it back. So at this point, as best we can say, it's really a suffix. Because who does this own this? Because I don't know. Ask me in 30 days.
During Pesach, it's a suffix.
It's a suffix.
Correct.
So therefore, the Yid also suffix is a suffix to a right. So we have to put it into your rishus. I don't have an option with
But
it.
once we're after the whole story and we know what happened, we know that the Yid couldn't pay up and the goy seized the chametz. So
Right.
after Pesach is over and after we have closure and we know what happens, now we have to go back and see where the chips fell. So if you hold them afrehu goiva, now we know already the goy got it, and we consider it like it belonged to the goy along. So on Pesach we weren't sure, but now that it's after Pesach, we know exactly what occurred, and we have to make a determination: is this chametz now after Pesach muter bahna or not?
But since at the time, so is it not any difference at a suffix that you were Mavar? What happens when you have a suffix by Chayla?
And then you found out what it was.
You found out, then you're chayiv. You have to do.
You have a regular carbon. So if you bring a nashim tali
Right.
because you weren't sure if you ate chaylev or not, and then you find that a week later you ate chaylev, you got to bring a regular carbon. The nashim tali doesn't cover you for that. The nashim tali only covers you until you find out what happened.
Or we say we need, oh, okay.
So the Gemara has a problem. How do we understand this brisa? It definitely cannot hinge on Ba'al Chayv L'Mafreyu Goyve or Ba'al Chayv Mikanu Lavo Goyve. Zok the Gemara introduces a new idea. Lahacha b'mayaskinon kagoin sherhinu etzlai, which means we're going to say that the brisa, the same way we learned shot in the Mishnah, that it was a question of a choiv koine mashkin, because it was actually given over to the malva to hold. That's how we'll explain this brisa. We still need some extra explanation here, because in our Mishnah it was also that way. So if it's a herinu etzlai, even Rava would agree that about choiv koine mashkin, and therefore if the malva is the goy, then it's not considered chametz over lava Pesach. And if the malva is a yid, then it is chametz over lava Pesach. But in our Mishnah, in our brisa that we quoted, we have a machloikis. We have a machloikis where the malva was the goy, and we have no machloikis when the malva was a yid. So it's not as clear and clean as our Mishnah, so it's going to need some extra massaging. And the machloikis over here has nothing to do with Abai and Rava. Rather, they're arguing about the halacha that Rabbi Yitzchak taught us. The Rabbi Yitzchak, minayin l'bal chayv shekoyne mashkin. How do you know that Abal Chayv is koyne mashkin completely lagabe achrayis, meaning he has to get insurance? He's responsible for oinsin. Shenemar, it says, the Torah tells you that if you have a beged shalayla, you have a cover, if you took it as a mashkin, you must return it to the loiva so that he could sleep in his cover at night, even though you have it as a mashkin. And the Torah says, tzedakah, it should be considered for you that you did a tzedakah, the fact that even though you're entitled to hold on to this mashkin, his quilt, but you're giving it to him to use at night so that he can at least have his quilt at night, that's a tzedakah for you. Frag the Gemara, if it's not legally yours, tzedakah minayin, it's not tzedakah. If the mashkin legally belongs to the loiva, so then you're not doing a tzedakah, you're giving the loiva what's his. But if you're b'chayv koine mashkin, then it's your quilt. So by you giving it to the loiva to use overnight, you're doing a tzedakah. Mikan, from here you know, l'b'chayv shekoine mashkin, that the b'chayv is koine the mashkin. So now let's see how the chips fall. Tanakama Sovar, the Tanakama in the brisa we just quoted, who said that if a yid owes money to a goy, the chometz that he used as a mashkin, you're not over. The Tanakama holds Hanamili Yisrael mi Yisrael hu de Karina Bay ulacha tia tzedakah. Let's look at the Tanakama said. Eino over, right? So the Tanakama holds Hanamili. When do you say that Abal Chayv is koina mashkin? That's Yisrael mi Yisrael. If a Yisrael lends money from another Yisrael, so the Malva and the Loiv are both Jews, then the Malva is koina mashkin. Because only there who the Karina Bay will chati tzedakah. It's a tzedakah because you're doing chesed with another Jew. So the Torah is only telling you clearly that the owner of the mashkin is the Malva when we're dealing with two Jews. Alvo Yisrael minachri boikani. But if a Yisrael lent money to an achri, you don't see it here in the Torah that the Yisrael will be kanya the mashkin. And therefore, since the Yisrael will not be kanya the mashkin, if a Yisrael lends money to a goy, that chometz that the goy gave him as a mashkin, he was not kanya. If he was not kanya, then it's not chometz shavar of a Pesach. Reb Meir Savar, Reb Meir holds you over Savar Kavachomer. Yisrael mi Yisrael kani. If the Malva is a Yisrael and the Loiv is a Yisrael, and we say that the Malva is kanya the mashkin, Yisrael minachi lakolshkein. Surely the rights of a Yisrael when he's lending money to a goy, surely he should have at least those same rights, and he should be kanya the mashkin. And therefore, Reb Meir in the brisa says that when a Yisrael lends money to a goy and he took chometz as a mashkin, that mashkin will be considered chometz shavar of a Pesach. But the seifa was when the Nachri lent money to the Yid. Aval Nachri shehilves Yisrael al chemtzai. But when the goy lends a Jew money and the chometz is used as collateral, Achar Pesach divrei koil over, there everybody holds that we consider the chometz in the rishus of the loiva, in the rishus of the Yisrael throughout the entire Pesach. Because Hazam Vadei Nachri mi Yisrael loikani. Everybody agrees that when we say Ba'chayv koine mashkin, it does not apply to when the Bachoiv is the Goy and the Yid is the Loiva. There for sure the Goy is not kind of the Mashkin. The whole question is on the opposite side, when the Malva is the Yid and the Loiva is the Goy, there did be a Machlokes whether or not you say Bachoiv kind of Mashkin. And that explains the price. Zok the Gemara, we have a problem. Tnan, Nochri Shehol Ves Yisrael Al Chemtzai, and this is our Mishnah, a Goy who lent a Yisrael Chometz, who lent a Yisrael money, and the Yisrael gave Chometz as collateral. Acher a Pesach Muter Bano. After Pesach, it's Muter Bano. The problem is, Nihinami der Hinu Etzloi, even if you want to learn Pshat of the Mishnah, which we did, where you gave this mashkin to the Goy, and the Goy is holding the Chometz in his house, that still doesn't explain why it should be Muter Bano. Because Ha'amrit Nachir Mi Yisrael like honey. We said a Goy is not kanya the mashkin from a Yid. So therefore, how does Rav understand our Mishnah that says in the Seifa that if a Yid owed the Goy money and the Yid gave the Goy Chometz before Pesach to hold in the Goy's Rishus throughout Pesach as a mashkin, how does our Mishnah say that it doesn't become Osir and it's not considered Chometz Shavar of a Pesach? The Goy was not kanya the mashkin. Because we said over here that everybody agrees that a Goy is not kanya mashkin from a Yid. So how do we understand the Seif of our Mishnah? So now we have another idea is ha the amalei me'achshav, ha the amalei me'achshav. In our Mishnah, it's speaking that when the Yid gave the mashkin to the Goy, he told the Goy that if I don't pay you by January 2nd, I want you to have my chametz, but I don't want you to be kanyed on January 2nd. I want you to be kanyed the chametz today. Let's use dates that are related to Pesach. On Rosh Chodesh Nisan, he borrowed money from the Goy and he gave the Goy chametz. And he told the Goy, if by Rosh Chodesh Iyar I haven't paid you in full, I want all of this chametz today to be yours. In other words, I want it to be a sale. If I don't pay you back by Rosh Chodesh Iyar, I'm selling you my chametz today. So therefore, it makes sense to say that it's not Asher Bano. So in our Mishnah's case, according to Rava, when the Yid borrowed money from the Goy on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and he gave him as collateral chametz, the Yid also said that should I not pay you back, I want you to be kanya the chametz now. And therefore, in fact, the chametz belonged to the Goy all along, and that's why it's not chametz shaval of Pesach. And now we're out of the difficult Gemara. When we know Tamri the Shani Lon, the Shani Loi ben Hechad Amar Me'achshav and Hechad Loi Me'achshav. Where do you find? How do you know there's such a thing that I could say when I borrow money that I want you to become a mashkin from now if I don't pay you back? Where do you see in a brisa? Where can we find support to this concept? Ditnan Nachri Shehirhin Paspurni Eitzel Yisrael, a Goy that borrowed money from a Jew and he gave the Jew as a mashkin Paspurni. Paspurni means a big loaf of bread. Now, in the olden days where everybody had their small mini ovens, you couldn't really bake large breads because it was a small oven. But in big communal ovens, they were able to bake big breads, like a sudachala. Nobody could bake a sudachala in their own home oven. You need a big professional oven. So a paspurni is like a sudachala. Why is it relevant that it's a sudachala? Rashi is very simple. A sudachala is worth $100, so it's something you'd use as collateral. But a small little bilkala that's worth $1, no one's using that as collateral.
Yeah, but it's going to go stale. What is that?
And somehow it doesn't seem like in those days they were concerned about that. If you're talking about chametz as a mashkin over Pesach, I don't know. So Nachri Shahirin Paspurni Eitel Yisrael, a Nachri that gave a Jew a mashkin, which was bread, Einoi over. He's not over. He's not over. In other words, he's not over, meaning we don't consider it like it belongs to the Yid. Vim Amar lo higaticha, but if the Nachri says higaticha, which the Gemara is going to translate meaning as me'achshav, if I don't pay you back, I want it to be yours already today, then the Yisrael will be over because of Chomet trouble of Pesach. Zok the Gemara, Maishna Reisha, Maishna Seifa. What's the difference if higaticha or not higaticha? Alav Shmamina, higaticha means shiny heicha da Amar le'achshav, laheicha da Amar le'achshav shmamina. The difference is if the guy, when he gave the bread to the Jew, he said, if I don't pay you back by the end of the month, I want this to be yours now. You see, it works. And that's why it becomes Osir. But if he doesn't say gaticha, then we say that the malva is only coined the bread at the end, and therefore he did not have possession of it over Pesach. Easy Gemara. Tanarban. Chanush Shal Yisrael. The Jew owned the store. Umalai Shal Yisrael. And all of the inventory in the store belonged to the Jew. But Goyish workers were in the store. And after Pesach, you find chametz in the store. Because we make an assumption that it probably was not chametz that was dropped by the goy. The chametz probably was from the store. And therefore, after Pesach, it's for sure asur b'achila because we consider it chametz sha'over alav Pesach. This, of course, this means where the Jew didn't sell his chametz or was mavatal. Chanush shel nachri. What if the store belonged to a goy? Umalai shel nachri, and the inventory belonged to a goy. Upayla Yisrael nichnasim v'yotzim l'sham, and he can go in and out. Chametz shenim shesham achar Pesach. If you find chametz there after Pesach, muter b'achila ve'in tzarich lemer ba'ana, because we won't assume that the Jew dropped that chametz and it was the Jew's chametz. Rather, we assume that was part of the inventory of the goy. Zok Gemara Bater, easy Gemara. Chametz shenafal of poilus. Chametz that a wall collapsed. I'm sorry.
Sorry, just to go quickly. What's halacha by kedushin if you say also lumafreya that you're going to be nikmet to me?
Your works.
Kind of tonight. She's mikudesh.
Sure.
From
the beginning. Yeah.
Even if he gives her chametz, right? If he gives
That's right.
her chametz,
That's right.
she's mikudesh.
That's right. If it's chametz is mutter by no, right? The chametz is mutter by no.
Yeah. Right. She keeps it.
That's right.
Pesach, it has a
But for the rest of his life, she will. But for the rest of his life, she will remind him that you didn't give me a ring.
He did. It was a what's was a Fabergé egg.
Okay, Zok the Gemara. Chametz shenafal of poilus. You had chametz and a wall fell down on it, so it's buried beneath the rubble. Hareyu kamavur, we consider it destroyed. There's no isur bal yira. How what's called buried? What's rubble that's considered buried? If a dog cannot dig after it and get it. You still have to make bittul. Even though you can't get to it, you have to make bittul. Why? Rashi, just in case someone ends up clearing away the gal, so even though you don't have to clean it out, you should be mevatlet. Tana, kama chavisha kelev. How deep does it have to be buried that will say that a dog can't dig after it? Shloisha tefachim, it's 3 tefachim deep. Amal Rabacha b'Rab Yosef or Ravashi, Hadam Shmuel. Shmuel said that if you're watching money, if you're a shomer for somebody's money, ksavim ein lam shmir ela b'karka. The only place where we consider it safe that you didn't make a pshia is if you bury the money. So how deep must you bury money for the money to be considered safe? Does it have to be buried 3 tefachim so a dog can't get after it? Or if it's just buried, it's good enough. Where you have food, chametz, which a dog will smell and go after, but there you need 3 tefachim because otherwise the dog will get it. But the whole purpose of burying money to protect it is so that it's not visible. Therefore, when you bury money, it doesn't have to be buried 3 tefachim deep. How much it has to be deep? Rav Rafam Bar Papa from Sichra said, tevach, the money has to be buried a tevach below the earth. It's funny that we say a dog cannot smell cash. The last time I went there to Israel, I brought with me, I believe, $5,000 of cash. And and it was in my wife's purse. And in the airport, as soon as we were going by the customs area, an Israeli dog comes right up to my wife and starts sniffing her purse. And right away, the border guard asks us, do you have cash in the purse? And we said yes. So they opened it up because they have to declare the cash. But their dog was able to smell the cash. And their dog couldn't smell the chametz. It didn't come up to me to ask me why I had a cookie in my pocket. But it went right up to my wife to ask why she has money. Okay, let's see the Mishnah. No, we'll stop. If you ate truma that was chametz on Pesach, so meaning it has no value because it's asur b'ano. B'shoigig, if you ate it b'shoigig, meaning you didn't know it was truma, then the halach is if you eat truma b'shoigig, you have to pay back the kohen keren v'choimish. You have to give back the not the value. You have to give back peiros and a fifth more. But b'mezid, if you knew it was truma and you ate it b'mezid, then it's pater mitashlumo b'mezid, then you're pater from everything. Why? Because the chiyuv that the Torah said that you must pay back a keren v'choimish to a kohen if you eat his truma is only said b'shoigig, and the Torah says don't pay him back. The Lashon HaGemara, the Lashon HaTorah is, it says as follows. It says in the pasuk, "B'chemishiza Yosy alav," and it says you have to give the kohen. It says "V'nasan lakohen es hakodesh." The Torah says if you eat truma b'shtoigig, you should give back the kohen kodesh. Dover haroyli es kodesh. So we learn from there that you don't pay back the kohen with money. If you ate his truma fruits, you ate his apples, you don't give him back cash, the value of the apples. You have to give him apples back. So therefore, even though it's asher b'ana, since it's not a monetary chiyuv, it's a chiyuv to give back apples. Therefore, you're mechuyev to pay a keren v'chaimish back, even though you didn't take any value from him because the chametz that you ate chametz, the truma that you ate was chametz, and it was asher b'ana. But it's not based on value; it's based on replacing the pairs, and that's why you have to still replace the pairs. But if it had been mazed, then it doesn't have these halachas. Then the Torah just says you owe him what you damaged him, so then you don't have to pay anything because it's asher b'ana. And we will stop here. What time is it? 10:06.
What are you calling